Okay, so we're here on Southern Port Sports Gumbo. It's Tuesday night, 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern, our regular time. We want to recap week 4 and look ahead to week 5. Week 5 has just got some outstanding games that we'll talk about tonight. Just a quick recap of week 4. To me, week 4 was about the coaches on the hot seat, and we did see one of them go ahead and burn through today that we had said was going to happen when that was Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. And we still got Sam Pittman and Napier, and then a couple others that we'll talk about tonight that I think are still watching from a wins. Oklahoma had a big win, and again, we'll all get into our teams of the week. I'll go ahead and start with my team of the week right now, and that's the Memphis Tigers. They put themselves in the playoff hunt by beating an SEC team, coming from 18-point down in the second half, creating 3 turnovers against Arkansas, and upsetting Arkansas 32-31. So to me, you got to put them in with UNLV and South Florida, and with the rest of their schedule, maybe Memphis jumps straight to the top. Ryan, what you think? What's your recap for the week and your team of the week from this past week?
Well, my team of the week is Syracuse, which basically is what I wanted to recap was that Clemson continues their free fall under Dabo Swinney, and it's just if somebody would have told me when the season started, hey, Clemson's going to be 1-3 after 4 weeks into the season, I would have said you're crazy. There's no way, not with that schedule. But here we are. We stand, with Clemson 1-3, and they went from people talking about them being a playoff team to maybe not even having a winning record this season, and them calling for Dabo's head. It's inexplicable to me how they've gone that quickly to where they are now. And it's I don't see them turning things around anytime soon. They just have a lot of trouble right now. Give my team of the week to Syracuse. But I have good news and bad news for Otto the Orange, which may be the ugliest mascot in the NCAA, other than the Hilltopper from Western Kentucky. Syracuse is 3-1, with their only loss being to a ranked Tennessee team. They won 3 in a row, and they're fresh off of being the latest team to make Dabo cry, as we said, in a 34-21 beatdown. Now the bad news. Steve Angeli is gone for the season with an Achilles injury. Syracuse has to rely now on backup quarterback Ricky Collins, and if that name sounds familiar to all you LSU fans, he was the backup quarterback at LSU the last couple of seasons. Excuse me. Kudos to Ricky Collins and for Angeli going out and beating Clemson, and of course behind Yassine Willis, who rushed for 3 touchdowns and 97 yards. But Syracuse now has to go with a backup quarterback against Pitt, Georgia Tech, Miami, and Notre Dame, with some really tough games coming up. So I don't know. Let's give Syracuse their win this week, and we'll see what happens with Ricky Collins behind center. Sweets, what do you got for your team of the week?
My team of the week is the Oregon Ducks. They are undefeated. They beat rival Oregon State 41-7. Week before that, they beat Northwestern by 20. Put a nail in the coffin of Mike Gundy by putting up 69 against Oklahoma State, and I'm sure they could have scored 100 that game if they'd have wanted to. They've just got it going. Dante Moore has put himself into the Heisman voters' conscience with his performance so far this season. He's passed for 962 yards and 11 touchdowns. They're running the ball well, led by Jaden Lamar in the backfield. He's got 215 yards. Jordan Davison has 5 touchdowns. And they're getting after it on defense, too, with Mateo Ugalele of DJ Little Brother fame. He leads the team with 3 sacks, and they've got it going. Their big game this week against Penn State up in Happy Valley, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to go ahead and early call that one. Oregon's going to win that game. Who do you got for your team of the week, DMAC?
Yeah, so I'm rolling with the Texas Tech Red Raiders this week. Dominant win on the road at Utah, 34-10 game. But what stuck out the most to me is Will Hammond came in after an injury to the starting quarterback and was really good. Ended up throwing a couple touchdown passes, like 80% completion percentage. Their offense was great all day, 484 yards, and held Utah to about 260 yards of total offense. I think they've got the next up-and-coming coach as offensive coordinator in Mac Leftwich, 30 years old, doing some really great things, calling plays. So that's my team of the week. Let's roll into player of the week. Kevin, who do you have?
So I'm going Justice Haynes from Michigan. He's got 530 plus yards on the year. He's got over 100 yards rushing in every game he's played this year. He's averaging 8.1 a carry. If you look, he has been their offense against Oklahoma when Underwood struggled. When Bryce Underwood struggled, he had 150 yards that night. And then this past weekend against Nebraska, Underwood played okay, managed the game within himself. But again, Justice Haynes again with another 100 plus yards weekend. I referenced that and the success that he has been their offense. You're not hearing anything about him in the Heisman race. But if he continues the season, you extrapolate that out, he would have over 1,500 yards, and he would probably be in the contention. They would talk about him. It's been a long time since we've had a running back win the Heisman, but I think you'll see him getting recognition from it. And he did play in the Atlanta area suites there at Buford. We both saw him play in high school, so he's having a heck of a season. And now I'll go ahead and hit on my disappointing team of the week and get that out of the way. And that would obviously be Oklahoma State losing to Tulsa for the first time since at home in Stillwater, since the first time in the 1950s. I only wanted to go ahead and hit on it because again today Mike Gundy was terminated. Tough beginning of the season. And Tulsa lost to a New Mexico State team too, so not like he lost to a good Tulsa team either. So they definitely have performed down, and it cost the coach his job. So, Sweets, who you got for Player of the Week and your disappointing team of the week?
My player of the week is Fernando Mendoza, quarterback for Indiana. For the second straight week, he's thrown for 5 touchdown passes and over 90% completion ratio. They beat Illinois 63-10 this weekend. He went 21 of 23 for 267 yards along with those 5 TDs. And the week before that, he went 19 for 20 against Indiana State with 5 TDs. A kind of a cool story because he's throwing to his little brother, Alberto Mendoza, and they've hooked up for some touchdowns there. So that's a pretty cool story. This kid transferred from Cal after they brought the wonder kind in this year, the freshman who's starting there, and he's been just balls out for Indiana. So my player of the week is Fernando Mendoza. Great job. Who do you got, Gumbo?
My player of the week, I know you guys would be surprised, but I'm going with somebody from Louisiana Tech, Toby Fields, who is a transfer from LSU, playing in his senior year at Tech. Playing against their heated rivals in Southern Miss at home Saturday night, Louisiana Tech jumped out to a 30-10 lead by halftime, and in the second quarter, they kept that momentum going when Fields had a pick six for 48-yard touchdown that they gave them a 23-10 lead, and he went on to get 9 tackles with a half a sack and then the interception. And through 4 games, Fields has 38 tackles with 2 sacks and 3 tackles for loss. And he's leading a Louisiana Tech defense that in 3 home games has scored 3 defensive touchdowns. So that hats off to Kobe Fields this week. D-Mac, what do you got?
Yeah, so I did not wear my sombrero today. I'll wear it next week from our friendly wager on the Southern Miss Tech game. But my player of the week this week's Josh Hoover, the quarterback at TCU. He threw for nearly 400 yards and threw for 5 touchdowns against SMU. And what for now is going to be the last Iron Skillet game. He's right at 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns so far this season. So off to a really good start. And my disappointing team of the week is Clemson. Expectations for them were sky high. They were picked as a national champion. by a lot of people before the season started. To lose at home the way they did to Syracuse, should never happen at Clemson. Not a shot at Syracuse by any means. They're going to be a much better team, and Fran Brown's doing a great job there, but Dabo can't let that happen. They were just beat in every phase of the game this week. So rolling into hot seat coaches this week, Brian, who do you have?
Well, the coach on my hot seat is Sam Pittman over in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Now into his 6th season with the Hogs, Pittman is 32-33 overall. His ceiling has been 9-4 in 2021. His floor has been 3-7 in his first year, and then they went 4-8 in 2023. He's been to 3 bowl games, and he's off to a 2-2 start this season, but let's be honest, he won the first 2 and has now lost 2 in a row. And he lost in an Ole Miss game he could have won, and then laid an egg against Memphis last week. And people are starting to grumble over in Fayetteville about a buyout. So I did a little research, and apparently Sam Pittman's buyout is anywhere from $7 million to $10 million, depending on what their record is when he gets fired, whether he's at 500 or below 500. So, and really, as we discussed before we went on air, that's really pennies for an SEC team the caliber of Arkansas's program. So, but the problem is, when are they going to get rid of him, if they're going to get rid of him? Because they still have Notre Dame, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn, LSU, Texas, and Missouri on their schedule. Where are the wins? They do have Mississippi State. Okay, maybe they'll beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State's 4-0. That's not a given. So they finished 2-10, 3-9. Do you wait till the end of the year and get rid of him and then do a comprehensive search for a coach? Who knows? I know the seat is doused with lighter fluid, and I would imagine there's some frozen chicken boosters standing there with a lit match, and they'll be toasting Sam Pittman's Razorback nuggets very soon. So, Sweets, who you got for your hot seat coach?
Well, my guy's been on the hot seat for a minute now. Sunbelt Billy Napier. He just he's under 500 in his time at Florida, and as we all know, the coaches who were there before him were shown the door with a lot better records than what he has right now. It's not really about the buyout or anything for Florida. Nobody has any idea what's going on. I know that a lot of boosters are not happy with Strickland running the program there. It's just wild to watch it happen. It's crazy because he was in the same position last year, and then he ran off a few upsets, which kind of, I don't think it necessarily took him off the hot seat, but it cooled it off a little bit. Now coming out this year and starting off 1-3 with not much relief in sight, I can't see them hanging on to him much longer.
All right. So I think Stoops at Kentucky, look, all of our hot seat guys have pretty much burned through those seats. It's just a matter of time for Pittman and Napier. But I think Stoops is going to be right there in that same group. I really don't think Kentucky's going to win another game the rest of the year with the way that Mississippi State's coming on and playing. And so I think he's my next guy. Going back to your question, though, on Pittman, I think with the Arkansas boosters, that's been kind of a split group over the last 10 years. They wanted Malzahn, some did, and some absolutely didn't want him. And so I think that's kind of they're doing some of the same thing. Some of them want Petrino back in the seat, and there's some there that don't want him back in that leadership role. I think he is working behind the scenes to try to get something done. And obviously, if they pull the trigger now and place him in that interim role and he does well, that only makes that more dicey. So, but I also say this, it's not going to be long. Another week or two. I think with Napier, Pittman, I think it's just a matter of time with those guys. Stoops may last to the end of the year, but I think with Napier and Pittman, I think it's before the end of October, they'll both be out of their roles. Anybody else got any thoughts on that hot seat coaches and who they would got?
Yeah, I want to touch on Arkansas for a minute and tell everybody listening to us tonight to go get their Tyson chicken before the price increase in a couple weeks. Because once that coaching change is made, is going up. But I put Luke Fickell on the hot seat this week. at Wisconsin. He is 15-15 at Wisconsin, 2-2 this year with a loss to Maryland this past week, and they travel to Michigan this week. So likely they're going to start the season 2-3. I think the only thing saving his job right now is that $25 million buyout that Wisconsin just can't afford. If he was anywhere else, I don't know if he'd be there next season, but he's a coach who probably deserves to be fired. I'm going to say that. But luckily, he's owed too much money, so he gets to stick around. We do have a question from Bob's Garage. He wants to know which coach we think is most likely to get fired first. Anybody want to take that one?
Well, we talked about
I
it
think it's
before.
going to be.
Go ahead, Sweet.
I think it's got to be Billy Napier. He's 1-3. Billy Napier's 1-3. There's no relief in sight with the upcoming schedule. His buyout is what it is. I think it's just a matter of getting everybody on board. I know a lot of the boosters are not happy with Strickland and the way he's running things right now. But yeah, I think Napier's gone within the next 2 to 3 weeks tops. So I think there's my input, Bob.
I think Pittman and Napier are both gone and could be done as early as Sunday for both of them. If Texas beats Florida soundly, and if Notre Dame beats Arkansas soundly, I think they're both done.
I can't disagree with either one of you.
Yeah, the one positive for Florida is I believe they're on bye this week, so
it may be next in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think Texas and Florida are both on bye, so that I think that buys Sunbelt Billy a job for at least another 12 days, 14 days. So that's the only positive for him right now.
I don't know. I heard bye week was favored by a touchdown over Florida.
And bye weeks are often when they make changes. So going into the bye week, which would be now. So it's really kind of surprising that they haven't done something. In both instances, there's no coming back from where they're at.
I got one more thing. I wasn't able to mention my toilet bowl team of the week, which is Kansas State, which came into the season ranked number 17 in the AP preseason poll, and they have since dropped to like number 198. I can't prove that because I'm just saying that off the top of my head. But they went over to Ireland and lost to Iowa State 24-21. Then they lost to Arizona last week. Well, they lost to Army also 24-20. And last week they lost to Arizona 24-20. I'm just kidding. They really lost 23-17. But they have games against UCF, Baylor, TCU, and Texas Tech coming up, and it's not looking too good for them to find their pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So I'm thinking Kansas State's more or less looking for a porta potty instead of a pot of gold. That's my toilet bowl team of the week. Are we ready to go into our game previews?
Yeah, let's roll into them.
All right, who's up first?
I think you are with TCU and Arizona State.
All right, let's go with it. Friday night in the desert. We got a Friday game. Sun Devils 3-1, fresh off of a 3-point win over Baylor on the road. TCU 3-0, picked up a big win in the Metroplex over SMU by 11. But I'm a little bit puzzled about this game because the Horned Frogs are a 2.5-point dog in this game. Maybe it's because, the Sun Devils are at home. I don't know. But they're playing well at TCU behind, and I think you guys mentioned John Hoover, who had 375 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Mustangs. But remember the name Eric McAllister, who had 8 catches for a whopping 254 yards and 3 scores last week. Big play receiver. But on the other hand, you have Arizona State, with Sam Leavitt is the man in Tempe. We know he's the man. Last week, he was okay passing the ball. He had a mediocre performance, 22-32, 221 yards and a touchdown. But when he's not flinging it, he can hurt you with his legs. And that's where Sam Leavitt becomes important in this game. He's rushed for 219 yards in 4 games with 4 touchdowns. However, I think in this game particularly, I'm going to go with Hoover being able to clean up in the desert, 31-28. What do you think about this game, D-Mac?
Yeah, I think TCU wins this game. I'm a big fan of Josh Hoover. Defense is playing well for TCU right now. We saw how vulnerable the secondary was for Arizona State a few weeks ago when they traveled to Mississippi State. So I think this is going to be a 38-17 game in favor of TCU. Big win for them on the road. What do you think, Sweets?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think they go in and handle their business. I think it's a 10-point victory anyway. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I like TCU. Right now, Josh Hoover's my number one quarterback portal target. I really like him, like what he's capable of doing. The only thing that he might play his way into the draft. He's playing really well. Played well in that TCU game or TCU SMU game this past weekend. SMU jumped up by 3 in the fourth quarter, and then he took TCU on 2 straight drives down the field. So I think it'll be a tight game, but give me TCU by 4 behind Josh Hoover, and he continues to play well.
All right, next up, we've got USC at Illinois. Out of conference game of the week. USC is favored by 7.5 over Illinois. Both are ranked in the top 25, so it's a top 25 matchup. USC is averaging 52.5 points a game. They've been remind you of the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush USC teams, the way they're scoring points now. Illinois is averaging 36.3 points a game, and that's even after the 10-point egg they laid last Saturday against Indiana. This game features Jaden Mavia for USC. He's got 1,223 passing yards on the year and 13 touchdowns. Waymon Jordan has 443 rushing yards for the Trojans, and Makai Lemon has 438 receiving yards for them. This is a game that should be close. I mean, they're both ranked. They're both borderline top 25 teams. But I think USC is got something to prove here, and Illinois is reeling right now. I think that USC is going to kick them while they're down, and I got USC winning this game. I'm going to go 45-27 Trojans. What do you think, DMAC?
Yeah, I'm with you. I like USC a lot this year. Yeah, they're kind of playing Big Ten football with the run over 1,000 yards on the ground already this year. I don't know if Illinois can even score 31 on them, if I'm being honest. I'm going to go 42. Yeah, we're going to have a blowout, 42-10 USC in this one. Who do you have, Kevin?
Look, after Illinois made us all look bad last week, there's no way I'm jumping back on that wagon. Give me USC in a blowout, kind of like what you guys are saying, 38-10. USC wins. Illinois may go down as our most overrated team from my standpoint, as where I was last week with them at the end of the year. And what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are there will be no champagne flowing in Champaign, Illinois. I think there's too much firepower with USC and Illinois. Man, they just got annihilated last week, and they've got to be wondering what the heck are we going to do from this point on? And we've got to regroup. But this is not the week they're going to regroup. I'm saying 37-13.
DMAC, let me ask you a question. Are you keeping track of these when all four of us pick the same thing at what our records are? We need to go back and look at that. So for the few people who watch the show that gamble, or if they if we all four pick the same thing, you're probably better off picking against that. But I'm curious what our record is in that so far. We'll have to look that up.
We all picked Illinois last week, so that tells you something. But go ahead, DMAC.
That's what I said.
What you're saying is the guys at Bob's Garage should not be picking USC this week, right?
Yeah, they should roll with Illinois.
Proceed with caution. Who's up next?
But now I think we all did pick TCU last week. I think DMAC's up next with Ohio State, Washington.
I've got the Ohio State Washington game. Ohio State travels out west to Washington, and they are, I think, a 13.5-point favorite. Ohio State is right now. The Ohio State offense is looking pretty good through a couple games. Julian Sayans, completing about 80% of his passes, 800 yards, 8 touchdowns right now. Bo Jackson is running the ball really well, about 12 yards a carry. And CJ Donaldson's averaging about 5 yards a carry on the ground as well. Where they really stick out to me, though, I had some doubts with the Ohio State defense coming into the year with new defensive coordinator Matt Patricia taking over. But they have really answered the bell. 7 sacks through 3 games. Playing really good football. I love their secondary and Caleb Downs, Jalen McClain, and then a few of their cornerbacks are really talented guys as well. So I don't think this is going to be a close game. Ohio State, I've got them winning this game 30-13 in this one, 25-point win for the Buckeyes. Their defense is going to suffocate that Washington offense. So that's who I'm rolling with. Who do you like in this one?
I'm with you. I think OSU wins this game. I think Brian Hartline is starting to find himself as a play caller. And he's going to grow into that role. He's a hell of a recruiter. Somebody I'd certainly love to have on my staff if I had a team. And they've got it going. They've got so much talent on both sides of the ball. The one thing that will make this game a little closer than I would normally think is they're traveling like 8 million miles to go cross country from Ohio to Washington to play this game. So I think the game's going to be a little closer. I'm going to go Ohio State 35, Washington 21. Who do you got, Kev?
I'm going to pick Ohio State, so I'll say that. But I kind of like the path that you ended there on. Washington is a tough place to play. Over the years, it's when they have a good team, it's a tough place to go in there and get a win. So I see that, and I think Washington's defense will keep them in the game. I think it'll be Ohio State a 24-21 type game. Ohio State may end up covering. Now, the spread on this started out a little more. I think it's at 6.5 now. It actually dropped quite a bit early. So I think it's right around the spread there, but I would take Ohio State. But I wouldn't be surprised if Washington pulled this off at home. Ryan, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think you guys, everybody knows Washington has a decided home field advantage. But in this game, even though Ohio State has to travel cross country, they have the Jimmies and the Joes. They also have the X's and the O's. So I think in this one, it's a no-brainer. I'm going Ohio State, and get this, I'm going Ohio State 31-3. I think their defense dominates.
You're not giving that home field much of a play in this one.
That's the 3 points I'm giving them as the home field.
Well, there you go. All right, so that brings us to Iowa State and Arizona. And this is a really good game if you're looking at a game that going into the season you didn't think would be, two undefeated teams. Arizona's 3-0, Iowa State's 4-0, and to me they're kind of mirror images. Both teams playing really well on defense, and both teams have good quarterbacks. So you have Rocco Beck against Noah Fafita at Arizona. Fafita's a really talented guy. Beck is an outstanding college quarterback. So I think this game is going to be a dogfight into the fourth quarter, and it's going to come down to turnovers. I think both quarterbacks are the type of guys that won't probably make a turnover, but I think a turnover in the fourth quarter decides it. And the game's being played at Iowa State, so give me the home team with a late defensive play to win this game, 20-17. I'll go with Iowa State. Mac, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, two really similar teams. But I'm going to go the opposite way here. I'm going to take Arizona for kind of the same reason you pointed out, the turnover margin. Arizona is +6 in turnover margin, which ranks them 4th in the nation. So I think they're going to force a late turnover and win this game. Who do you have, Sweets?
I've got that score too, 27, but I've got it for Kansas State. Iowa State has won 3 one-score games this year, starting out against Kansas State in Dublin, and they just keep getting it done in close games. I think they do it again at home. They're a gritty, tough squad, and I think they pull it out at the end and win 27-24. What do you got, Gumbo?
I'd have to agree with Sweets. I think Iowa State knows how to win ugly games. I think this is going to turn into an ugly game, and I just think they're too tough at home. They just know how to win. They're a team that just wins, and as Al Davis used to say, "Just win, baby." I think I don't see a team from the West Coast going into Iowa State and beating them on their home floor. So, you know, in honor of my sports editor, Matt Bellinson, who's an Iowa State grad, I'm going Iowa State 23, Arizona 10.
And he buys lunch if they lose.
All right, so
Nice.
that leads us into that leads us into some SEC games against some really competitive SEC games. We started off at noon on Saturday with Notre Dame and Arkansas. D-Mac, what's your thoughts on this one? This is an interesting game.
Yeah, so you have the Catholics traveling down to the Bible Belt for a I'm gonna call this Catholics versus Baptists
That's it.
today. But, I just don't trust Arkansas to not turn the ball over when it matters most. When they lost that close one to Ole Miss a couple weeks ago, this was kind of a game that I had circled where they had a chance to go 4-1 in my mind after that Ole Miss game. Well, fast forward now, it's looking more like 2-3 versus 4-1. Taylon Green, really, really good quarterback, throwing for about 325 yards a game, which is where I could see Arkansas having some success. The Notre Dame defense has not looked like a Notre Dame defense to me this year through 3 games. Even against Purdue. Purdue had some big explosive plays against them, so that defense just kind of came out really sloppy. They're giving up 397 yards a game, which ranks 100th in the FBS, and they're giving up nearly 300 passing yards a game, which ranks 130. I think there's only 132 teams. Maybe there's 140 now, but so I see Arkansas having some success in the pass game. But on the flip side, I do like Notre Dame's offense as well. Their CJ Carr's passing the ball pretty well as a true freshman for them. And Jeremiah Love is too good of a running back not to step up at some point this season. So it's a 3.5-point line in Notre Dame's favor. I'm going to go with a 38-31 game. I can see this game being tied with Arkansas having a chance to win it, but I think a costly turnover, most likely another fumble this week, gives Jeremiah Love a chance to get a late touchdown for the Fighting Irish. So Notre Dame 38, Arkansas 31. What do you think, Brian?
Well, in a game where we have touchdown Jesus versus please score a touchdown, Jesus, I think there's just too much firepower for Notre Dame. Basically, I don't think Arkansas has a prayer. Too much chatter going on with the Sam Pittman buyout and the Sam Pittman on the hot seat. I think Taylon Green will get some plays. They'll have some big plays, opportunities, but not much against that Notre Dame defense. I'm going Notre Dame 27 and Arkansas 14.
I'm with you. Gumbo. I like Notre Dame big in this one. I think it's a perfect spot for them. Listen, they're 1-2. Nobody expected them to be that after 3 games. And they need a bounce back game. This is the bounce back game for them. Arkansas's struggling right now. They've got the rumors of Pittman getting ready to get fired. They haven't been playing that well, and I just think it's a great spot for Notre Dame to come in, punch them in the mouth, and hold them to a low score defensively. I've got Notre Dame winning this one 31-10. I don't think it's close, and I think that this might be the one where the pit boss is in the unemployment line Sunday morning. What do you think, Kev?
So I really, Daniel, if I would have known better, I would have said you grew up in Fayetteville with the Catholics versus Baptists. Growing up in that area, you couldn't be more spot on about that than that example. And I totally agree with kind of how you played this game out. Arkansas is talented. Notre Dame's secondary is vulnerable. So will Arkansas score some points and move the ball? Yes. Arkansas's defense, on the other hand, is not very good. So will they stop Notre Dame and CJ Carr? I think you got a close game going into the fourth quarter with both fans feeling like they can win. Arkansas was ahead by 18 against Memphis the other day, and I was texting some friends in Northwest Arkansas telling them you need to go to the Notre Dame game. It's going to be a great game to watch. And then, but over the Pittman years at Arkansas, they lose these tough games. And I think this is another one they lose with a turnover, with penalties. with the little things that you lose games by. So you called it that. I think so. I like your score, 38-31. They might get another late score off of a turnover, but give me Notre Dame in roughly in that same range. But good stuff there.
All right, let's move on to the next game. We have LSU at Ole Miss in a huge rivalry game over in Oxford, Mississippi this week. And I just want to say this Ole Miss fans are already up in arms because Whit Weeks is dating Lane Kiffin's daughter, apparently. So, and that's not going over too well over in Oxford. But anyway, it was an anomaly last week. Ole Miss found a defense. LSU found an offense. So what gives for this battle Saturday? I think the biggest question mark of this game will boil down to whether or not Ole Miss quarterback, whoever is behind center, whether it be Trinidad Chambliss or Austin Simmons, will they be able to move the ball with any consistency against LSU's defense, which is 8th nationally in total defense at 260 yards per game. Trinidad Chambliss has played well. He's played better than Austin Simmons has this so far. So I would probably lean toward him getting the call Saturday to be the starting quarterback. And I think Blake Baker comes after him. Now, should Austin Simmons play? I think Blake Baker comes after him. In other words, Blake Baker's just going to come after whoever's playing quarterback, and I don't blame him one bit. I think they put pressure on him, and I don't think the Rebels can put up more than 10 to 17 points against LSU's defense. Question is, can LSU's offense keep its momentum going now that Nuss seems to be healthy again? His torso looked really good last week, and no weird jokes there, okay, guys? Nuss went for 273 yards, 3 touchdowns against Southeastern Louisiana, I know, but he looked like his old self again in little bits and pieces in that game, and he threw the ball better downfield. I know Sweets likes that part of it. So neither team will be able to run the ball with any kind of consistency. We know that. That leaves the game up to the quarterbacks. So who are you going to choose? You're going to choose Trinidad Chambliss, or are you going to choose Nussmeier? Give me Nuss over the inexperienced guy, and I'm going with LSU 28, Ole Miss 17. What do you think, Sweets?
Listen, your mouth to the God's ears with going downfield, buddy. I like LSU to win this one. I think it's a 31 type game. I think our defense is just too much for them. We probably end up scoring a defensive touchdown or maybe a special teams touchdown, which is why I've got it at 14 for us. LSU looked a little better. It was against Southeast Louisiana, but still there were some things that some questions you had that were answered. We were able to put some points up. We're just calling our shots on defense, and I think that's what separates us from Ole Miss in this game, is that they're just not going to be able to put up points against that Blaine Baker defense. So I'm going to go LSU 31-17, and baby girl Kiffin may get grounded after the game if Weeks goes off too much. Hope all is well in Oxford. Who you got, D-Mac?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to this game this weekend. But in this one, I love the LSU Tigers. Looking at Ole Miss defense, I think our offense has a chance to have a big game against their defense. They're starting free safety Sage Ryan's a former LSU guy. Lafayette kid, but if he was on this team right now, he would probably be running with the threes at LSU. So I think we've got a chance to push the ball downfield a little bit. I think Chris Hilton's going to get his first touchdown of the season in this one. He would have had one last week against Southeastern if it wasn't for the pass interference. We need to get him moving a little bit in the long passing game. So I think LSU's going to win this one. I'm going to go 31-10 in this one. We're going to stay with the one touchdown, give up on defense. Probably a trick play from Lane, maybe a flea flicker type of play, something crazy that they score a touchdown on. But Whit Weeks is going to feast in Oxford all weekend this weekend. So the Tigers are going to win big. Who do you have, Kevin?
Yeah, I like LSU a lot in this game. I just think when you look at the matchups, so let's start first. Let's go Ole Miss offense against LSU's defense. And I rewatched Ole Miss and Tulane this week, and Chambliss had a really good game, but it was because he was so much better athletically than Tulane's defense. when I look at what Perkins and Weeks and Keys, and then the ends Peyton and Fiburn and those guys can do from an LSU standpoint, we have the speed to run him down. He's not going to get in the open field. I'm not going to say he won't get one or two of those runs. He will, but he's not going to consistently run the ball against LSU. They can put Perkins in that spiral if need be. So when I look at that, I think their offense will go through some dry spells. And if Simmons plays, he's been turnover prone. And against this secondary, I don't see him, if he plays very much, I don't see him not having a turnover or two. So I give that advantage a lot to LSU on the defensive side of the ball versus Ole Miss offense. As good as Kiffin is, they might score 14, 17 points, but that's what I give them. And then you flip it over LSU's offense against Ole Miss's defense. I just don't think that Ole Miss's defense matches well against LSU's offense. Their secondary is their weak point. That being said, their rush defense is like in the hundreds as far as where it's ranked. So I think LSU's offense will have the ability to run the ball as they need be. And then when they can attack downfield in the passing game, you mentioned Sage Ryan, their secondary is just not very good. Arkansas put in the 30s on them. So I really think LSU wins the game 31-17. And this is a game that I have felt since the preseason that LSU would win. I just don't see this Ole Miss team is not as good as they've been the last few years. And I think they're about to hit their stretch of the season that's going to show that. So I guess I'm saying Vegas is way wrong, but that's just what it is. Anyhow, I think we all take LSU in that game too? Is that another 4-0? We better watch ourselves.
Boy.
So
Yeah,
I feel
might
confident.
be.
All right, so then that takes us to Auburn and Texas A&M.
We got a question.
Yeah, we do. What we got?
We have a question from Savannah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
what
she
type of
wants to know
changes?
what types of
Go ahead.
what type of changes do we need to see in our offense to ensure a good game this week and an overall good season? Kevin, you want to run with this one?
Yeah, I think it's just like what we saw this past weekend with a solid running game. With Johnson, he had a really good game. And then we know Durham's capable. He was good against Florida and he was good against Clemson. So we don't have to be dynamic in the running game. We just have to be solid with the running game, and then we have to be diverse when we're throwing the ball. And by that I mean attack different levels. If they're gonna play 2-3 deep, we got to be able to throw 15, 20-yard routes, and we were able to do that this past weekend. Nuss finished, I think, 25 out of 31 with 4 drops. So I don't know that you can repeat that. But if he gets close to that and we just mix the passing game up, Anderson's got to be we've got to get the ball to him early, and he's got to be our number one guy. And I really think Thomas is at the number 2 part with the wide receiver group now. And then I think we got to be careful on the tight end piece of the things. I think we have 2 capable tight ends, but I don't think you got to try to force it to both of them. Again, I think we've got to attack with our wide receivers. Green will be back this game, and Sharp, just let them play a role in the passing game. But I think more consistency of what we did this past Saturday. We were efficient on offense. By that I mean no turnovers, limited penalties, and I think we will do that again this week. And we played 2 good defenses early. Clemson's a good defense. I know they're not a great defense, but they're a good, solid defense. And that's the first game of the season. And Florida, as bad as they are, they're a good defense. Florida's a top 20 defense. So I still think this offense was good last year, and the line is going to continue to get better. We still got opportunities there, but a good, diverse passing game mixed in with running the ball. I think we're going to continue to get better, and I think we do this weekend. So going from there, let's talk about Texas A&M and Auburn. Good game coming this weekend. Auburn last weekend lost a tough game with Oklahoma, a 1-score game, and now they've got to go to A&M and play back-to-back road games in the SEC, which is never good. The matchup this week is to me, it's going to be about the offenses. I say that because I do think Auburn has a better defense than A&M, but I think A&M's offense is really good with Concepcion at wide receiver and Craver at wide receiver, and they got a really good running game with that offensive line and and their quarterback. So he's playing as good as any quarterback in the league. So I think A&M will be capable of putting up 24, 27 points. I also think Auburn, even though Jackson Arnold was sacked 9 times and he held onto the ball, I do think there were periods that he did throw the ball well and he did not turn the ball over. He's still got to get better holding on the ball too long. But I think they can build off of what he did in that Oklahoma game on the road against maybe the best defense in the league. And so I think both these teams get in the 20s, and I think this is a really competitive game. I'm gonna, this may be the week that I get off the train, but for now, I'm gonna stay on the Auburn train, and I think they're gonna fight really hard coming off that Oklahoma loss to split the back-to-back road games. I think Auburn's gonna go in and surprise some people, and I'm gonna give them a 27-24 win in College Station. D-Mac, what you got?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good game. Auburn had some really good moments, and if there's a penalty thrown last week in that game, who knows what happens last week. This is a really good Texas A&M offense and a really good Auburn defense. And then the Texas A&M defense is solid, same with Auburn's offense. So it's a really good matchup for both teams. I think it's like a 5.5 point line right now as we sit here on Tuesday. So I think it's going to be a close game, like you said, Kevin. Marcel Reed, though, I think it is the difference maker through 3 games. He's passed for almost 900 yards and 9 touchdowns to 1 interception. So, it's been a tough week for Auburn. Lost to Oklahoma. Bruce Pearl resigns or retires as coach. And I think the week's only going to get a little worse for him. I think Texas A&M wins a close one. I'm going to go 30-24. And I want to note that Hugh Freeze is 2-7 against SEC teams in 1-score games. So I think that's going to continue on. He's going to drop to a 20% winning percentage in 1-score games in the SEC. Rolling with Texas A&M. Who do you have, Brian?
Well, I think this game, especially being played in College Station, and we know Mike Elko likes to play physical. So I think it's going to be a physical game. Can Auburn go in there on the road, especially coming off a tough loss, go in and play physical for 4 quarters with Texas A&M and match their energy? And I think they won't be able to, especially with that crowd. And that's where I don't think it's going to be a touchdown score. So I don't think that comes into play. I think too much Marcel Reed. I think too much running game. And I think they'll take their shots downfield with Concepcion. And I think it actually turns into a 34-20 ball game. And I think Texas A&M comes out on top. Sweets, what do you think about this game? Sweets, you with us? Okay. Shall we move on to the next game?
Yeah, we'll move on to Tennessee, Mississippi State.
All right. So I have a question for you guys, D-Mac and Kevin. What would it sound like with ear-piercing cowbells pushing the beat of a Rocky Top song?
Shit, just absolutely.
I don't know, but I don't want to find out because I don't want to be anywhere near. Don't want to be anywhere near Stark Vegas Saturday. As Skip Burtman used to say, Starkville is an old Indian word that means trailer park. I had to throw that in there, Skipper. Well, the Bulldogs are 4-0. They have a ranked win over Arizona State. Blake Shapen is playing well, and they have the emergence of Anthony Evans III as their wide receiver 1 as his main target. Running game is bullying people with Fluff Bothwell and Devon Booth. I think that all comes to a screeching halt Saturday in Stark Vegas, like a shoplifter at Dollar General in Starkville. It just stops. So if these teams were automobiles, Tennessee is a Corvette, and Mississippi State is a 1977 F-150 pickup. So too much Aguilera, too much Brazel, too much Star Thomas, and way too much cowbells for me. I think the Vols win this by 3 touchdowns at least. I think they're up by 20 at halftime, and they come out 41-21 Tennessee. Sweets, what do you got with this one?
I'm putting in with you here, Gumbo. I think that Heupel has already lost one SEC game that he should have beat in Georgia, so they can't afford to lose again, and they also need style
I
points.
don't know
This
if
is an
he's back with
opportunity for
us or
style
not.
points. Yeah, I think Tennessee and Josh Heupel call their shot here. I think they win something like 45-17 or something like that. It's not going to be close. Aguilar is going to have his way with Mississippi State's defense, and the Cowbells will be drowned out by halftime. So give me Tennessee big. Go ahead, Kev, jump in there.
Kevin, what do you got with this game?
So I'm going to go with Tennessee, but I'm going to tell you, I would almost love to hop on the Mississippi State bandwagon on this one because they're playing well. They're a much better team than last year, and so I think they'll make this a dogfight. I think Tennessee pulls out a one-score game late, 31-24. But if you're a college football fan and you want to watch a game, I would pick this game to watch Saturday. I think Tennessee will get a dogfight out of Blake Shapen and that whole group from Mississippi State. So that's it. D-Mac.
Yeah, Tennessee's been good this year. Joey Aguilar looks like a great quarterback. Yeah, their defense is playing well. Special teams, aside from one long kick, has been really good too. On paper, this one all lines up for Tennessee. But before the season, I predicted Mississippi State to go 3-9 this year. They're 4-0, so they keep outperforming my expectations. So for that reason there, I'm rolling with Mississippi State at home in their all white uniforms. Tennessee loves to wear their white on the road. They're not going to be able to do that this week. I think Blake Shapen leads the Bulldogs to a big win at home. And, Mississippi State starts the season 5-0 in a 31-28 game with a late field goal to win it. I'm gonna be the guy that picks the other team this week. So
Wow, go ahead, D-Mac, clanging the cowbell.
And I like the pick.
Love it.
I just think Aguilera and Tennessee have been so good on offense, but I like the pick. You had the courage probably to do something that probably a lot of us wanted to do.
I didn't want to pick Mississippi State.
No, I'm not anywhere near picking Mississippi State.
You just hate the Cowbells. That's all.
Yeah.
I do, yeah,
So
I admit that, but
that takes us to the game of the week with Bama and Georgia for Sweet. Sweets, what you got?
I'll tell you this one has been circled on the puppy calendar for a long time. Georgia has a 33 game win streak at home that they're looking to continue. Kalen DeBoer has not been good on the road. I'll be short and sweet. I like Georgia to win this game. I think they win by 10 to 14 points. I think that they're more talented than Alabama. I think they're better coached than Alabama. I think they just go out and get it done here. I think that you're going to see the Georgia run game come out and punch Bama in the mouth and control the clock, stay on top of them. And defensively, I think that that the Bulldog defense gets after Ty Simpson and shuts him down. They shut down Ryan Williams and they hold Bama to maybe 14 points tops. I think Georgia's going to win this game 30-14. I just think they're too much for Alabama in every way, shape, and form. What do you think, D-Mac?
Yeah, like you said, Kalen DeBoer has been really bad on the road in his time at Alabama. Georgia looked much improved against Tennessee from an offensive standpoint. Gunnar Stockton was throwing the ball well, had a really efficient game. Don't know. I think this game is what Georgia's a 3.5-point favorite. I like Georgia in this one. I think their defense is turning a corner, getting back to a Kirby Smart type of defense. I think this is going to be still a relatively low scoring game with an over under at 53.5. I'm going to roll with a 27-13 game in favor of the Georgia Bulldogs. What do you have, Kevin? Think you're on mute there.
Yeah, you're right. Appreciate you calling that. Well, this is a game that Georgia has to win. We said during the preseason that Kirby Smart has to beat Bama this year. When Saban was there, he couldn't beat Saban. Everybody thought he was going to win last year, and he goes in and gets behind, rapid, crazy comeback in the second half, and then lost it there in the last couple minutes. But this one's at home, so talented team that he has playing a Bama team with one loss. He can't lose this one. So I do. I think Georgia's going to win. I think Bama's playing better, but you mentioned Wisconsin earlier. I'm not sure Wisconsin is the good team. Well, I know they're not. So I'm not sure how good Bama is. So I think this is a game where we really gauge how well Bama is playing versus that loss to Florida State. I think in this environment, Georgia is going to win the game. I'm going to call 31-21. I think Georgia will be able to run the ball. I think Stockton will make some plays, and I just think they'll be grittier. And it wouldn't surprise me if this ended up being I said I gave it a 10-point game, but it wouldn't surprise me if it ended up being a 17-point game. Georgia pulls away in the fourth quarter. Ryan, what you got?
Well, I think after we got over the fact that Kevin's computer muted him after he almost picked Mississippi State. What is this, a day game or a night game?
It is
A
a night.
6:30 game.
So
Yeah.
night game. Okay. I think I'm a little bit flummoxed over this game, and I don't know what to think of Alabama just yet, because are we going to get the Alabama that looked god awful against Florida State? Are we going to get the Alabama that's been rebounding a little bit? I don't think Ty Simpson's going to have a good time against that Georgia defense Saturday. I think that's where the game's going to be won. I think defensively. So I think it's a close one. I think it's going to be 6 points or less, but I'm going with Georgia to win it by a field goal. And I say it's going to be something like a 27-24. Let's go with the Georgia Dogs. So we go to Sweets now to take us away for the Kentucky and South Carolina matchup, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Lenore Sellers is back at quarterback for South Carolina, and he's looking to come back with a vengeance here. South Carolina's lost 2 games, and they really had high expectations and outside hopes that they would get into the playoff here. But after losing the past 2 games, they're in trouble. Beamer's not on the hot seat in any way, shape, or form. But South Carolina just hasn't lived up to the hype so far. A lot of that has to do with the inconsistency on offense, and it's been rough on them. Kentucky's also been inconsistent on offense, and that's why they made a change at quarterback. They went from mine and Kev's man Zach Calzada, live long Zach, and they went ahead and put Cutter Boley in to start over him this week. He hopes to bring something that Calzada hasn't brought, and provide a spark against South Carolina to get him going. I don't think it happens for him. I think Kentucky is awful. South Carolina has not been much better this year, but they're better than Kentucky. I got South Carolina winning this one 34-13. What do you think, Gumbo?
Well, I think this is a game where you got 2 teams that are in desperate search of an identity. I think neither team has found that yet. Granted, South Carolina has had to struggle with injuries with Sellers being injured, but I think he's back now, and I think he's healthy, and I just don't see any way or form Kentucky having any kind of roster to compete with South Carolina, especially at their stadiums. I'm going South Carolina 30 and Kentucky 10. DMAC, Kentucky and South Carolina.
Yeah, to me, this is my who cares game of the week. Kentucky is really bad. South Carolina's been bad this year. I think Carolina's like a 6.5-point favorite at home. Unless you're Vanderbilt, I think South Carolina's a pretty tough place to go in and play. So I think South Carolina probably wins this game in like that 31-10, 31-17 range. It takes care of business because Kentucky is just that bad. We'll see if Cutter Boley is going to be an improvement over Zach Calzada. At a bare minimum, at least it gives them something to look at for next year. If he could be their guy, or if they need to go to the transfer portal this offseason, South Carolina shouldn't have an issue in this one. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I am totally on board with South Carolina's not going to have a hard time in this game. They were better last week. Sellers played a full game, and their receivers played a little better. And Missouri just at home. Missouri's got a good team, so they lost a tough game on the road, but I think they got better. I think you're going to see them, go home and continue to get better. And I think they pull away and beat Kentucky 28-7. Won't be a close game. Who does that bring us to next?
Sweet, you want to talk about Utah State and Vandy?
Sure. Yeah. My man and your man and everybody's
he
man,
does. He's
Diego
going to talk
Pavia,
about
is leading.
Diego any chance he gets.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Rico
sir.
Suave.
That he is. Is. Listen, he's having a great year so far. Vanderbilt's undefeated and ranked, and they're playing well. They're going to beat Utah State this week pretty handily. But Utah State's got a good offense now, led by former Virginia coach Bronco Mendenhall, who is Clark Lee's mentor, by the way. Not a well known fact there, but they're pretty close.
D-Mac, why don't you talk about this game and we'll try to get back to sweets.
Yeah, so Vandy is 4-0. They've got Utah State coming in. I think this is going to be a big win for Vandy. But one piece I do like for Utah State is their quarterback Bryson Barnes. He's thrown for nearly 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns to 1 interception this year. So does have that Utah State offense rolling a little bit for kind of the first time since Jordan Love was there quite a while ago. But I think Diego Pavia is going to be too much for them, along with the run game for Vanderbilt. Their defense has been solid all year. So I really like Vandy in this game. I think the Lions 21.5 right now. I think this could be like a 42-13 game. So I think Vandy wins this one with ease. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, Vandy's a good team. We've talked about them the last couple of weeks. Vandy wins this game 37-10. Look, they're a good team. They're a top 20 team. LSU plays them in October. Any team that's got Vandy under schedule, you better prepare for them the week that you play them, or they're going to beat you. I wouldn't be surprised if this Vandy team wins 9 games at the end of the season. They're going to win 8. So, yeah, they're going to win this one.
That's sweet.
Pavia and Vanderbilt are both looking great so far this year. Pavia's got almost 900 yards through the air, 215 on the ground. They keep winning. They're consistent on defense. Eli Stowers is catching the ball and running the ball after the catch. Everything's looking good for him. Utah State has a pretty good offense, though. Quarterback Bryson Barnes has 982 yards through the air with 8 touchdowns and 1 pick. He's hitting at about a 66% completion percentage, so they can move the ball around. But I think that at the end of the day, Vanderbilt's playing good ball. They're at home. They beat this Utah State team 42-14, and Diego marches on, and we will get his Heisman campaign rolling officially next Tuesday if he has a big game Saturday.
All right, Diego Pavia. Well, if this game is 21-point spread right now, I'm going to say that Vandy covers by halftime. And I think by the third quarter, Pavia will be out sitting on the bench with a gold chain around his neck and waving at the crowd. I just think they got too much. They're really rolling right now. Clark Lee has them playing well. I think they have it going offensively and defensively. So I'm going to go with Vandy 49-21. Which takes us to our last game of the night. Kevin, you got Mizzou hosting UMass.
Yeah, so before we get to that, I want to throw a question at Sweets there. We got one, and again from Bob's Garage. Does Vandy make the playoffs this year? So again, Sweets, you've been on the Pavia train. You're driving that train. Does Vandy make the playoffs?
Let me go ahead and look at their schedule real quick to net out the next with what they have left, because they're 4-0 right now. They should be 5-0 after this weekend, which means they'd have to win 5 out of their next 7 to have a legitimate shot at the playoffs. They go to Alabama. They should be underdogs in that game. However, they did beat Alabama last year and can do it again after El Diego is the king of Alabama. LSU at home after that. LSU offensively has been really inconsistent. It's a game LSU should win, but Vanderbilt can win that game. I don't think they do. On the road at Mizzou, another tough game. No, Vanderbilt's not making the playoff. They're not making the playoff. There's a little too much. A little too much with their remaining schedule for them to get in there. But I do think they win 8 games and possibly 9, and it's still going to be a storybook year for the Commodores. So good for them.
That's right. That does bring us to the last game, UMass and Missouri. Missouri, I don't know who did their schedule to begin, going into this year, but they started off the year with Central Arkansas, then played a tough game against Kansas, then played Louisiana, tough game against South Carolina. So they're back playing weak sister now. UMass is 0-3. Missouri's 4-0. Missouri's got a good team, good offense, solid defense, very underrated defense, in my opinion. Give me Missouri in this game, 52-7. But this is the last week that Missouri has one of these games. If you look from here on, their schedule, they play Alabama at home, which I think that'll be a really good game. And that's coming off a bye. Both those teams will have a bye on the 4th, and that game's October 11th. Then they go to Auburn. Then they play Vanderbilt on the road. That could be potential. Then they host A&M, and on down the road. So Missouri better win this one and keep everybody healthy because their schedule's about to get really challenging. That being said, I think they win it with ease. I think Ahmad Hardy, he wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't pop off another 200-yard game. What about you, Brian? What's your thoughts on this one?
You know, over the last couple of years with Eli Drinkwitz at the helm of Mizzou, every year I say the same thing whenever they get off to a fast start. I say, Mizzou, they're doing it with smoke and mirrors. They're not really this good. But they keep doing it every year. So at some point, I'm going to have to admit that Mizzou is a good program. And I think that they're a top tier SEC program, and they've proven it. I'm almost at the point where I'm going to do my Eli Drinkwitz imitation to say MIZ, but I'm not going to do that. So I think this game will be a laugher. I don't see it being any close. It's going to be whether or not Mizzou scores 50 or 60 or however they want to score in this game. So I'm going Mizzou, and I'm not even going to name a score. D-Mac, what do you got in this one?
Yeah, so, the UMass Minutemen have the 124th ranked defense in the nation. They played Temple, Bryant, and Iowa. None of those teams scream offensive powerhouse to me that have put up points and yards. I think the Missouri starting offense should probably recoin the name Minutemen, and they should only be in this game for a minute. Let those guys rest, get ready for the SEC slate they have coming their way. What's the line on this one? 43 and a half. Yeah, that is a lot of points. I could see this being like a 70 game, honestly. So Missouri will win big. Sweets, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. This is just a game that Mizzou just wants to get through healthy. Maybe let Hardy go for a $175 in the first half before you sit him down in the second half. The key is just getting out of these games healthy. They're going to blow them out and name their score. I'm gonna say they score 56-3. Call it 56-3 Mizzou. And like I said, the most important thing is staying healthy because the rest of their schedule is a bear. They're like Vanderbilt right now. They're undefeated and they're looking good, but the meat of their schedule comes after this week. So we'll see how good they are moving forward. What's next?
Yeah, so that wraps up all of our game previews. I do want to switch gears and talk about basketball for a second. And talk Auburn basketball specifically. Bruce Pearl announces he's retiring, and his son steps in to take over at Auburn. Kind of want to get your thoughts on this, guys. Anybody wanna take and share some thoughts on, Bruce Pearl retiring?
So let me jump in here. So first of all, it's not a surprise. He's been talking on political shows for the last 6 months, and he's mentioned that he's open to run for Senate, and the seat that Tommy Tuberville's going to leave open when he runs for governor, and he's already announced that. So then let's go to the basketball side of this. Obviously, when you do it this late, you're doing it to keep players from entering the portal. Everybody's got their roster. So, there's very few teams that have openings. And then also you're doing it to get one of your assistants promoted. Stoops did this for Lincoln Riley, and other coaches have done it at different points in time. And so, it played into, I think the second part of this that he wanted. He wanted his son to get the head job at Auburn. I think Auburn will have a good team this year because they got good players. So I'll start there. But the thing that I think Auburn has to be very careful of is these situations where you've had coaches in waiting and it's been, someone in the family that, well, let's just call it a son they've not really played out that well over the years. So I think Auburn will have a good year this year. Tough SEC. I don't think they'll be in the top sixth, seventh in the league, but I think where the drop off could come is after this year. So been a tough week for Auburn fans. You mentioned it earlier. You know, they lost a tough game, then they lose their basketball coach, and they lost a game where the SEC comes out and admits a play's bad, and then they got a schedule where they got to play for the next 4 years. They got to play Bama and Georgia every year. So the Auburn fans have had a tough week, and I think short term won't be bad, but long term, I don't see this working out for them long term. Brian, what's your thought?
Really, I'm not a huge Auburn basketball fan, so I really don't get into too much basketball with Auburn. But I do admire what Pearl has done there, and he's kind of revived that program. And I admire what he's done. I'm just a little taken back by the timing of all this, and it just I'm not sure what will happen, what will follow in the coming days. I just admire him. He's a guy that's very outspoken on issues, and I think whatever he chooses to do, he's going to be successful at it. And I think Auburn will be just fine. I mean, they've got the recruiting side of that going. So whoever takes over is definitely walking into a good position there.
Bruce Pearl he's a little bit of a slime ball. He's had his share of controversy over the years, dating back to when he was an assistant coach at Iowa, recording another coach for the NCAA. So, and then he got in trouble at Tennessee. He's had some issues at Auburn, but the guy can coach basketball and he knows basketball talent. Auburn's got it rolling right now. They've got probably one of the top 5 rosters in America, thanks in large part to all the recruiting that he does here in Metro Atlanta. But I don't know his son's chops, if he's going to be able to keep this going or not. We'll find out really soon. Perhaps the son's able to keep it going. But like you guys, I've never seen one of these things work out where daddy hands the reins off to baby boy and baby boy, just keeps the ball rolling. I don't see that happening here. Little Pearl's probably out of a job within 3 or 4 years, and that's the way it goes. Whatever Pearl does, be it politics or whatever, wish him well. Best of luck.
Yeah, he did address the Senate seat last night, and he is staying steadfast and he is not running for that Senate seat, was what he said last night in an interview. So that's interesting. That was my first thought when I saw Bruce Pearl resigns or retires. Okay, he's going to run for senator. Last night he says he's not, which if you play into that, he's not running for it. Um, if he had kind of named Steven as coach in waiting, at the end of the day, Auburn could always change their mind if it's done in the off season. When retire weeks before a season,
Yeah.
5, 6 weeks before the season starts, you get to name your son coach. It pretty much cements that I saw he signed a 5-year deal. So maybe it's more about just giving his son the shot. It's going to be interesting. I know Stephen Pearl's really big on the recruiting side for Auburn, and I would guess, he's been around his dad from his playing days to coaching, so maybe some of that on-court coaching is rubbed off. It'll be interesting to see regardless. I do like, if I'm an SEC coach, I've got to love playing Auburn more this year without Bruce than with Bruce. So yeah, going to be an interesting season for Auburn basketball. Anybody have any other thoughts before we wrap up on anything?
The one thing I do hope, and I'm being sincere in this, is I hope it's not health reasons why he's retiring. I hope that he's tired of it, or he's going to go into politics or something else, because you never want to see somebody have to bow out because their health doesn't allow them to do it anymore. So whatever he does, I hope it's not health related. Go ahead, Kev.
Closing thoughts. I got to mention my alma mater. It's been a tough last year and a half for Oklahoma State football. And I just want to mention some potential candidates here for the job. Wise decision today. Look, Gundy's maybe the best coach the program's ever had, but he didn't adapt to NIL. So look, I would love someone like Alex Golish or John Summerall, but I think both those guys will end up in the SEC. My number one choice, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the offensive coordinator that was there in 2011 and broke records offensively. Give me Todd Monken as my number one choice. That being said, he's done a great job over the years. He's very proven, and he could take an NFL job. A few other coaches that I think you could see in the contention there. G.J. Kinney is another one that I think will get a look. Eric Morris from North Texas, and he's done a really good job there. I think you'll see him also potentially get a look if one of those other guys doesn't emerge. And then Jeff Traylor is another one that I think that could also get his name in there. And then one mention that I like as that's a coordinator, and that was somebody that was mentioned in our Broyles group, and that's Colin Klein, the Texas A&M offensive coordinator who was at Kansas State and has a Big 12 background. So I think those are some early candidates to consider for that. But again, give me Todd Monken. You got to go to him and make him say no. And then also let me also say this. For those that are in the we got to hire an alumni. I just don't think Zach Robinson's ready yet. Falcons offense has not been anything special. So, give him the chance to grow and develop, but don't make that move. Go after one of those other guys that I mentioned. So anybody else got any last thoughts?
Yeah, I have a thought on that Oklahoma State job. I agree with you. Yeah, Todd Monken should be the first and the last call if they're serious about competing for championships over there at Oklahoma State. I think you've got to call some of the kids from the Pickens family and make things happen and get Todd Monken back there. He was turned around a Southern Miss program, coached that Georgia offense for 2 national championships, has done well with the Ravens and Lamar up there. I think that, until he tells you no, you keep calling him if you're Oklahoma State. And, and in a perfect world, he's winning a Big 12 championship and a bunch of them over the next 5 to 7 years over there.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, along those lines, you
what
mentioned
does he
the
take the
Pickens
job?
family. So let me tell you that Monken, if the pay's there, if he doesn't get an NFL job, yes. He sent his daughter to college there recently. So he likes Oklahoma State. Now, if he gets an NFL job, you would take an NFL job over NIL. But they've got a new guy that's been given a lot of money to the university, not in the Pickens family. Just hired a wrestling coach a year ago that this guy paid a lot of money for. So the CEO of Paycom, Chad Richardson, has kind of stepped in there and been given a lot of money to the school. So I got to believe he's playing a role in this too. So anyhow, that's my last thoughts there. But yes, Sweets, if he doesn't get an NFL head job, I think he would take it. Any other last thoughts?
Just make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and keep watching on Tuesdays. We'll record our high school podcast on Thursday, and then Saturday night, Sunday morning, we'll hop on and do our Saturday overview, review all the games, and go from there. We'll see you guys live next Tuesday at 6:30 Central Time again.